My stepmom begged me to help cover Dad's medical bills. I gave her $12,000 without hesitation. Weeks later, I discovered my dad was never sick. He thought I'd moved on because I didn't even call. She had blocked my number on his phone, told him I didn't care, and used the money to buy a timeshare in Florida. When I showed up at their house, she screamed, "You're just jealous he loves me more." Then my father walked out with a suitcase, saying he was coming home with me. I'm 34 years old, living in Dayton, Ohio. My dad, Mark, is 67. He's a tough, blue-collar kind of guy who worked at the same factory for 35 years before retiring. Grew up poor, built a life with my mom, never wanted anything fancy. Just family, a fishing pole, and a cold beer on weekends. When Mom died from a sudden stroke 10 years ago, it nearly killed him too. They were high school sweethearts. I thought he'd stay alone forever. But about 5 years later, he met Patty. Patty was different. She smiled big and called everyone honey and sweetheart, but it never felt real. It always felt like she was sizing you up while she smiled. I didn't like her much, but Dad seemed lighter around her. So I swallowed my gut feelings and tried to support them. I visited when I could. Sent birthday cards. Christmas gifts. I thought we were okay. Until October of last year. It was a Friday night, and I was just settling in after work when Patty called. Her voice was trembling. I could hear sniffles like she'd been crying. "Hey, sweetie, it's Patty. I hate to bother you, but it's your dad. He's real sick, baby. Real bad." My stomach twisted instantly. She said he had been diagnosed with liver cancer. Aggressive. Spreading fast. She said insurance wasn't covering most of the treatments, and they were drowning in medical bills. She said Dad didn't want me to know because he didn't want to be a burden. I didn't even think twice. I told her to give me her bank info. I wired $12,000 that night. That was about half my savings, money I had been setting aside to maybe buy a house one day. But none of that mattered in that moment. If it would help my dad live, I'd have sent every penny. After that night, things got weird fast. I kept texting and calling, asking to talk to Dad. Patty always had an excuse. Always. "He's resting right now, sweetheart. He's too tired today, honey. We had a rough day at chemo. Maybe call later." Sometimes she wouldn't answer at all. I told myself not to push. I didn't want to stress him out if he was really fighting for his life. Weeks passed. Then months. I didn't even get a Thanksgiving call. I figured he was just too sick, but something gnawed at me. At Christmas, I mailed a card to their house with a Starbucks gift card inside. It came back returned to sender. That's when alarm bells really started screaming in my head. I called Patty. No answer. I texted. No reply. I called Dad's number directly straight to voicemail. I tried to tell myself maybe he was in the hospital full-time now. Maybe things were really bad. But that gut feeling kept clawing at me. One Sunday morning in January, I couldn't take it anymore. I got in my truck and drove 3 hours to their house in Columbus. It was a cold, gray morning. I remember pulling up and seeing Dad's truck parked out front. The porch lights were on. A wreath still hung on the door from Christmas. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked harder. Finally, Patty cracked open the door. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. Her eyes darted behind me, like she was checking if I was alone. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice high and tight. "I came to see Dad," I said. "How is he? What's going on?" She tried to block the door with her body. "He's sleeping," she snapped. "You can't just show up unannounced. You're gonna upset him." I stared at her. I couldn't even find words. I heard the TV inside. Some game playing. And then I heard his voice. "Who's at the door, babe?" My dad's voice. Strong. Normal. Alive. I didn't wait for permission. I shoved past Patty. And there he was. sitting on the couch in his favorite recliner, wearing his OSU hoodie, sipping a Bud Light and watching the Browns lose another game. Healthy, laughing at the TV. He turned and saw me, and his whole face lit up. "Hey, look who's finally decided to visit." I froze. I literally couldn't move. "Dad," I croaked. "I've been trying to call you. I sent money for your treatments. Patty said you were sick." He blinked, confused. "Sick? What are you talking about?" "I'm fine. You never called once. We thought you moved on." I turned to look at Patty. She was trembling, hands balled into fists at her sides. Her face was twisted up in rage. "You're just jealous," she screamed at me, her voice shrill and cracking. "Jealous that he loves me more than you. You always have been." Dad stood up slowly, his face pale. "What the hell is she talking about?" he asked me. I looked him dead in the eye. "She blocked my number on your phone," I said, my voice shaking. "She lied to you. Lied to me. Took $12,000 from me. You were never sick." The room was dead silent except for the football game blaring in the background. Dad didn't say a word. He just walked down the hall. 5 minutes later, he came back with a suitcase in one hand and his keys in the other. "I'm done," he said, looking straight at Patty. "I'm leaving. I'm going home with my kid." Patty's mouth flapped open and shut like she couldn't decide whether to scream or cry. Finally, she settled on screaming. "You can't just leave. You think you can just walk out? After everything I've done for you," she shrieked. Dad didn't even flinch. He just opened the front door. I could see the tears building up in her eyes, but it didn't move me. Not anymore. The woman standing there wasn't desperate. She was exposed. As Dad stepped outside, she grabbed at his arm. "You're making a mistake. She's poison. She only wants you now because of your money." Dad shook her off so hard she stumbled backward. "Money," he said, his voice low and furious. "Lady, I've got about $2,000 to my name. The only money around here is the $12,000 you stole." Patty's face crumpled. And then she said it, the words that finally ripped off the mask completely. "I deserved that money," she spat. "After everything I put up with. All those boring fishing trips, all those disgusting factory stories, I earned it." I was frozen in the doorway, staring at her like she was some creature I didn't recognize. Dad just shook his head slowly. "You earned nothing," he said. And with that, we walked out to my truck. Dad climbed into the passenger seat without looking back. As I backed out of the driveway, Patty came running into the yard, screaming curses. She hurled a ceramic flower pot at the truck, but it missed and shattered on the driveway. We drove away without saying a word for a long time. When we got back to my apartment in Dayton, Dad finally broke the silence. "She showed me a new investment she made," he said, staring out the window. "Said she bought us a timeshare down in Florida. I thought it was suspicious, but she said it was her savings." I felt sick. "That's where the money went," I said. "The money I sent." Dad nodded slowly, like pieces were falling into place. He asked if he could use my laptop. He logged into his bank account and just stared. It wasn't just the $12,000. Patty had been draining his retirement too, little by little. Tiny withdrawals over the last 2 years. Thousands gone. All while telling him she was handling the bills. That night, Dad made 2 calls. First, he called his buddy, a retired cop, and asked for legal advice. Second, he called a lawyer. We filed a police report the next morning. And then Dad filed for divorce. But Patty wasn't done. A few days later, she showed up at my apartment, banging on the door, wailing like a wounded animal. "Mark, come out here. You can't do this. I love you," she sobbed. I didn't open the door. Neither did Dad. We just sat inside, lights off, listening to her scream and pound the door for an hour before she finally left. Dad didn't cry. He just sat there, face like stone, sipping his coffee. But later that night, when he thought I was asleep, I heard him quietly sobbing in the guest room. Weeks dragged by. Patty tried to fight the divorce, claimed she was owed alimony, claimed Dad was abusive, laughable to anyone who knows him. But the truth was on our side. Bank statements, voicemails, the wired transfer receipts from me. It took months, but the divorce went through. She walked away with nothing but the clothes she came with. No house, no car, no pension, no timeshare. She ended up moving in with her sister in some rundown duplex outside of Cincinnati. Dad and I are closer now than we've ever been. We go fishing most weekends again. He's learning how to use a smartphone properly this time, without Patty blocking people behind his back. The $12,000? I'll never get it back. But honestly, that's not what eats at me the most. It's the betrayal. The way she used my love for my dad like a weapon. But in the end, she lost the one thing she couldn't buy. Family. And me? I got my dad back. And I'll never let anyone come between us again. Just when I thought we could finally start putting it all behind us, Patty found another way to crawl back into our lives. It started with small things. First, Dad got a letter in the mail. No return address, but inside was a copy of a receipt for a storage unit rental. Scrawled across the paper in red marker were the words, "You left more behind than you think." Dad didn't want to deal with it. Said she was just trying to stir up drama. But something about it bothered me. So I convinced him to go check it out. We drove across town to the address listed. It was a cheap storage place, the kind with rusty gates and half-broken cameras. The manager didn't want to let us in at first. Said the account was still under Patty's name. But after Dad showed his ID and explained the situation, the guy made a few calls and finally let us in. We found the unit. It was small, dusty. The door creaked like a horror movie when we rolled it up. Inside were a few boxes. Nothing special at first glance. Some old photo albums, fishing gear, a few ratty pieces of furniture. But then, tucked in a corner behind a broken lamp, I spotted something. A stack of mail. Bills. Statements. All with Dad's name on them. Unopened. Unpaid. Turns out, Patty hadn't just stolen money. She'd been hiding debt from him too, real debt. Credit cards she opened in his name. Medical bills for procedures she had done but blamed on him. Collection notices. Tens of thousands of dollars. My stomach dropped as I flipped through the papers. This wasn't just some emotional scam. She'd been financially bleeding him dry for years. Dad just stood there, staring at the pile like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. We spent hours sorting through the mess. Dad was quiet the whole ride home. Finally, he said, "She didn't love me. Not even a little bit." It wasn't a question. It was a fact he was finally able to say out loud. The next week, we met with a fraud attorney. There was a lot we could do, press charges, sue her for damages, but the lawyer warned us it would be a long, messy battle. Dad didn't hesitate. "Let's take her down," he said. Meanwhile, Patty wasn't sitting still either. She started leaving nasty voicemails, emails, even handwritten letters stuffed in our mailbox. She was unraveling. One night, Dad got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of the two of them on their wedding day, with the caption, "You'll regret this." Dad just shook his head and deleted it. But it got worse. 2 weeks later, Dad's truck got vandalized. Windows smashed. Tires slashed. Spray painted across the hood were the words, "Traitor." The cops said they couldn't prove it was her, no cameras, no witnesses, but we knew. We knew. That's when I realized, this wasn't over. Patty wasn't just bitter. She was obsessed. And if we didn't finish what we started, she was going to keep coming back, keep clawing at us, until there was nothing left. After the truck was trashed, Dad stayed quiet for a few days. Not angry. Not sad. Just cold. Something in him had shifted. One evening, while we were sitting at the kitchen table, he looked up from his coffee and said, "I've been too damn nice for too damn long." The next morning, he called the lawyer again. He wanted to press full criminal charges. Fraud, identity theft, harassment, property damage. The whole damn package. The lawyer told us it wouldn't be easy, that it could drag on for months, but Dad was done rolling over. I backed him 100%. If she wanted war, she was going to get it. We filed everything. The court date was set for 3 months out. Meanwhile, Patty must have gotten wind of what was coming because the messages started up again, more desperate this time. Letters begging him to forgive her, emails saying she was sick and in therapy, texts claiming she needed him and couldn't live without him. Dad didn't answer a single one. Neither did I. But Patty wasn't finished. A month before the court date, she showed up at my workplace. I was walking out of the building to my car when she jumped out from behind a dumpster. She looked terrible, hair greasy, eyes wild. "You have to stop this," she screamed. "You're ruining my life. You think he's gonna thank you for this? You think you're the good guy." I didn't say a word. I just got in my car and locked the doors. She banged on my window, screaming, until security came running out. They called the cops. She bolted before they got there, but I had it all on video. Added it straight to the evidence file. The day of the court hearing finally came. Patty showed up wearing a ratty old dress and a fake neck brace, trying to play the victim card. Dad just sat there, calm as ever. We had everything. Bank statements, text messages, emails, pictures, voicemails, security footage from my job. Patty didn't stand a chance. The judge didn't even hesitate. She was charged with fraud, harassment, and destruction of property. She was ordered to pay restitution. Over $80,000 and sentenced to 2 years probation with mandatory psychiatric counseling. If she violated any part of the order, she'd face real jail time. After the hearing, we walked out of the courthouse. Dad turned to me, slapped me on the back, and said, "Let's go fishing." That was it. No drama. No long speeches. Just us, moving on. A few months later, Dad got a letter. Not from Patty, from the sheriff's office. Turns out, Patty violated probation within 6 months. Threatening another ex-boyfriend, stealing money again, getting caught lying to the courts. She got sentenced to a full year in county jail. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not one bit. She built her own prison. Brick by brick. Lie by lie. And when it all finally collapsed around her, there was no one left to blame but herself. As for Dad and me, we're good. Better than good. We bought a small fishing cabin down by Indian Lake. Nothing fancy. Just peaceful. Just ours. No more lies. No more manipulation. Just the two of us healing, slowly but surely. And every time I cast a line into the water, I remember. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. And some people, like Patty, don't deserve either.